She laughed right in my face when I signed the papers. A $5 shack? Honey, that's not a lake house, that's a rat's nest, she said, folding her arms like she owned the whole neighborhood. Her name was Linda, but everyone secretly called her HOA Karen. She was the self-proclaimed queen of the Lakewood community, even though the lake wasn't hers to begin with. The shack looked like a joke from the outside, peeling paint, broken deck, and a "keep out" sign from the 90s, but I saw something she didn't. The view behind it, miles of untouched lake. I knew what that meant. And I knew something else, something no one in that smug HOA circle had a clue about. The day after I moved in, Karen showed up holding a clipboard like she was about to deliver a court order. "You can't live here. This property's condemned," she said, snapping pictures of my door. I just smiled and said, "You sure about that?" She didn't like my tone. Within hours, the HOA started their little war. Fake violation notices, noise complaints when I wasn't even home, and one morning, my gate had a red sticker saying "eviction in progress." But here's the thing. That land wasn't under the HOA, it never was. I had bought the last piece of land that legally sat outside their jurisdiction, a forgotten slice from the 1960s, that somehow slipped through when the lake community was formed. The title was clean. The land was mine, but Karen didn't believe that. The next week, she called the cops on me, waving her fake papers. "He's trespassing on HOA property," she yelled, loud enough for half the neighborhood to gather. The officer looked confused, checked my ID, then my deed, and the look on his face said everything. He turned to her and said, "Ma'am, this property isn't in your HOA." But Karen wasn't done. She smirked and said, "Oh, we'll see about that." And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a shack. She wanted the land, because something big was coming. She didn't know that I already knew, and I had the receipts to prove it. 2 nights later, I saw flashlights flickering through the trees behind my shack. At first, I thought it was kids fooling around until I heard voices. "Mark it here. This whole stretch," one of them said. I peeked through the window and froze. It was Karen, and 2 men in suits spray painting bright orange lines across my backyard. I stepped outside quietly. "You mind telling me what you're doing on my land?" I asked, holding up my phone, already recording. Karen turned, fake smile on her face. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said. "We're conducting a property survey. The HOA has plans for this area, community expansion." "Funny," I said, pointing at the private property sign. "Because this isn't HOA land." Her smile twitched. "Not yet." That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my old laptop and searched public records again. And there it was, an unannounced development permit filed just a week ago. The HOA was partnering with a private real estate company to build luxury lakefront condos. The problem? The condos were planned right where my shack stood. Next morning, Karen showed up again, this time with a stack of papers. "Sign these and we'll buy your land for $20,000, she said, as if she was doing me a favor. I looked her straight in the eyes. "You're offering me 20 grand for a lakefront lot worth millions?" She leaned closer. "It's not worth anything, if you can't keep it." The threat was clear. That evening, I came back from town and saw that my dock had been destroyed, boards ripped, rope floating in the water. My security camera light was smashed. They wanted to scare me off. But what Karen didn't know is that I used to work in federal property restoration. I had access to legal archives, land survey records, and contacts who owed me favors. I called one of them, Tom, an ex-county officer, and asked him to dig deeper into the HOA's expansion file. An hour later, he called back, his voice low. "You're not going to believe this, man. They forged the boundary map. Your land's marked under HOA control, but the official record says otherwise. Someone inside the office changed it." And that's when I knew it wasn't just corruption. It was fraud. Karen thought she owned the lake, but she had no idea she just stepped into a trap. The next morning, I woke up early and set my plan into motion. I mounted a small hidden camera near the dock and another on the front porch light. If Karen wanted a fight, I'd let her start it, on record. Around noon, I heard the familiar sound of her golf cart pulling up, engine sputtering like it owned the road. She stepped out, sunglasses on, clutching her clipboard like a sword. Behind her were 2 HOA board members, Richard, a retired banker who nodded at everything she said, and Emily, who always followed along to stay in her good graces. "We're issuing a final warning," Karen declared, waving a yellow paper. "If you don't vacate by tonight, we'll have this structure condemned." I folded my arms. "Go ahead. Make sure you're smiling for the camera." She blinked. "What camera?" I pointed at the light post. "That one. Oh, and about 3 others you probably didn't notice." Her smile cracked. "You're recording this?" "Sure am. Especially the part where you trespass and try to enforce fake HOA laws on land that doesn't belong to you." For a second, no one spoke. Then she turned red and hissed, "You'll regret this." She stormed off, but not before I caught her muttering, "They'll make sure you're gone by tomorrow." That line stuck with me. "They'll make sure." That night I heard an engine outside again, louder this time. When I looked out, my heart dropped. A tow truck was backing up to my shack. 2 men jumped out, hooked chains to the porch posts, and started pulling. I ran out yelling, "Hey! You can't do that!" But before I could reach them, Karen appeared from behind her SUV, recording me on her phone. "See? He's violent. He's threatening workers!" she screamed, pretending to be scared. But what she didn't realize was that my cameras were rolling too. The men stopped when I called the county sheriff's office right in front of them. "Yes, I'm reporting an attempted property theft and vandalism in progress. Footage recorded," I said loud enough for them to hear. They froze. Karen's face drained of color. 15 minutes later, 2 real deputies pulled up. Karen ran toward them, shouting, "Officer! He's trespassing on HOA land!" One deputy raised a brow. "Ma'am, this call came from him. Step aside." I handed them my deed, the old county survey maps, and the footage from the cameras. The deputy looked over at Karen and said quietly, "You might want to call a lawyer." But she just laughed, this ugly, confident laugh. "You think this changes anything? You're one man. You have no idea who you're dealing with." I smiled back. "Neither do you." Because what she didn't know was that tomorrow, a county inspector and a local news crew were both coming. The next day, the air felt heavy, like the whole lake was holding its breath. By noon, cars started pulling up near the shore. First the county inspector's SUV, then a white van with Channel 7 local news printed on the side. Karen must have seen them too, because within minutes, her golf cart came speeding down the gravel road. She jumped off, furious, trying to look calm in front of the cameras. "Good morning," she said loudly, walking right up to the reporter. "There's been a misunderstanding. This man built a structure on HOA property, and we're simply enforcing community rules." The inspector ignored her and turned to me. "You're Mr. Cole, right?" he asked. I nodded and handed him the file, original deed, survey, and digital timestamp from the county office Tom had sent me. He took one look and said, "This land is officially outside the HOA boundary. Has been for 63 years?" The crowd that had gathered went quiet. You could almost hear Karen's pride shatter. "That's impossible," she snapped. "Our maps say otherwise." The inspector turned his tablet toward her. "Then your maps are wrong or forged." For a second, her mask slipped. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said, voice shaking. "We filed everything correctly." "Then you won't mind me verifying the signatures," he replied, pulling out a folder with HOA documents. "Tom had helped me get through a public records request. Funny thing," he continued, "these signatures from your office, all done by the same person, even the ones supposedly signed by 3 different county clerks." Karen froze. The cameras caught everything, her silence, the inspector's words, the whispers spreading through the crowd. Richard and Emily backed away from her, realizing what she'd done. The reporter stepped forward, holding out her mic. "Mrs. Benton, are you aware that forging county records is a felony?" Karen's lips trembled, but she still tried to fake control. "This is all a misunderstanding. He's manipulating everyone," she shouted, pointing at me. I stepped forward, calm and steady. "You tried to steal my land. You broke my dock. You filed false eviction notices and called the cops on me. But now everyone knows." The inspector turned to the deputies nearby. "We're going to need a full investigation. Ma'am, please step aside." Karen looked around. No allies left, no fake power to hide behind. For the first time, she looked small. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone, opened the video folder, and hit play. The screen showed her and those 2 men spray painting my property lines at night. Gasps filled the air. Even the reporter's eyes widened. Karen's voice cracked. You set me up. I looked straight at her. No, you set yourself up the moment you thought I was just some guy with a $5 shack. The deputies led Karen aside while the inspector continued gathering documents, but something in her expression didn't sit right with me. She wasn't scared, she was calculating. Even with the cameras rolling, her eyes darted toward Richard, then Emily, a silent signal. That's when I realized she wasn't acting alone. After the crowd began to clear, the inspector pulled me aside. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "I need to show you something." We found an internal memo linked to that real estate development. Your parcel isn't just valuable, it's sitting on a water access line worth millions. They plan to use it as the main inlet for the new luxury resort. My stomach dropped. So this was never about HOA control. It was about water rights. He nodded. Exactly. Whoever controls that inlet controls the future project and the profits. That explained everything. The threats, the forged maps, the night visits. Karen wasn't just power-hungry. She was protecting a deal that would have made her and her board rich. I was about to head back to my shack when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, and a deep voice said, "If you know what's good for you, sell the land and disappear." Then the call ended. That night, someone fired a rock through my window. A note landed on my floor. "This isn't over." I called Tom again. "They're desperate," I said. "We need to make this go public before they cover their tracks." Tom's tone was grim. "Already ahead of you. Channel 7's piece airs tomorrow morning. I sent them everything. The permit changes, forged signatures, and the footage." The next day, the story exploded online. HOA fraud scandal exposed. Officials. Implicated in multi-million-dollar lakefront scheme. By noon, every neighbor had seen it. Cars were lined up by the gate, people whispering, recording, furious. When I stepped outside, Richard was there shaking his head. "She dragged us all into this mess," he muttered. "We just wanted improvements for the community." I stared at him. "You let her destroy people's lives for greed." Before I could say more, 2 black SUVs pulled up. Men in suits stepped out, county investigators. Karen was still standing on her porch, pale and trembling. One officer approached. "Linda Benton, you're under arrest for document forgery, fraud, and property tampering." The crowd started cheering. Someone even yelled, "That's what you get, Karen!" As they cuffed her, she turned to me, eyes burning. "You think you won? You'll lose everything when they find out who you really are." The words hit me like a brick. When they find out who you really are. No one else seemed to notice, but my chest tightened. She knew something. Something I hadn't told anyone. The air went still after Karen's words. Everyone else thought the story was over. The villain exposed, justice served. But that one line, it echoed in my head like a warning. When they find out who you really are. That night, as the sun dipped below the lake, I sat on the porch of my old shack, now the most talked about property in the state, and thought about the secret I'd buried years ago. She wasn't wrong. I wasn't just some ex-worker who stumbled onto a cheap piece of land. I was the former federal land claims investigator who once handled cases exactly like this. I'd left the job quietly after exposing a corrupt city official. And I'd bought this shack under a private name to live in peace. But peace was never in Karen's vocabulary. The next morning, reporters gathered again outside. One of them asked, "Mr. Cole, how did you know all those legal details so fast?" I paused, then smiled. "Let's just say I've seen this kind of fraud before." Then, right on cue, a drone flew over the lake, Channel 7's. The broadcast went live, showing Karen's arrest, the forged documents, and the footage I'd provided. But there was one final clip they hadn't aired yet, my own recording from the night she marked my property lines, where she confessed to Richard, "Once we get that water permit signed, the council will pay us $5 million. That clip played across every TV in the county. Within hours, the entire HOA board resigned. The real estate deal collapsed. The county froze all their accounts pending investigation. A week later, a letter arrived from the county registrar's office. Property reassessment complete. Valuation $543,000. I laughed quietly. The $5 shack that everyone mocked was now worth $5 million. I didn't sell it. I rebuilt it. With my own hands, a fresh dock, a small American flag fluttering by the water, and a sign on the gate that read, "Private property. The land always remembers its true owner." When a new neighbor moved in across the lake and asked about the story, I just smiled and said, "Let's just say, some people laughed when I bought it. They're not laughing anymore. And every time I looked out at that lake, I remembered the moment Karen screamed, 'Arrest him!' on my land. I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't own a piece of it." Now, the whole world knew whose land it really was. Viral line, they laughed at my $5 shack. Now they're watching me own the lake they tried to steal. The end. Subscribe my YouTube channel for more stories.